Hi, I'm someone with Tran, or with Tran. Today I'm presenting about post-traumatic stress disorder, mainly focusing on combat-induced PTSD. Post-traumatic stress disorder could happen in rape victims, auto accident victims, natural disasters, man-made disasters like 9/11, or other various violent situations people can get into. Once again, my main focus is going to be combat-induced post-traumatic stress disorder. Being ex-military myself and seen war and been in wars myself since I was a child of 4 years old in Vietnam, that's why I've chose this topic. So I'm here to bring awareness and to help my brothers and sisters in arms to heal from PTSD permanently, like I did, or should I say continue to do so this day. PTSD combat related. There's a difference between combat stress and combat-induced PTSD. Let's look at the difference. By definition, combat stress is expected and predictable reaction to combat experiences. After being in a combat zone where you're under constant physiological stress, like poor diet, extreme temperature, little opportunity for personal hygiene, and psychological stress, such as improvised explosive devices, IEDs, snipers, or the death of fellow servicemen, and other number of responses. Combat stress continued. These responses are often show up as hypostartle, exaggerated response when something surprises you, often a loud noise, hypervigilance, always being on guard or super alert, nightmares, irritability, sleep problems, etc. While they sound negative, some combat reactions are actually considered adaptive, notably hyperstartle and hypervigilance. Combat-induced PTSD. PTSD, combat-related, on the other hand, refers to psychological disorder which impairs functioning, impairs pretty much all day-to-day functions and activities, impairs memories of a person, impairs the learning of a person, impairs psychologically, impairs mentally, impairs physically. It's considered very serious, whereas combat stress is considered to be a normal reaction to traumatic circumstances. History of PTSD and wars. Different names for PTSD to times. In World War I, it was called shell shock. They had chemical warfare and trench warfare. Bad combination. World War II and Korean War was called combat fatigue. Only until after Vietnam War did the conditions really focus on after combat symptoms of PTSD. During the 1970s, great many soldiers came home experiencing psychological distress symptoms, and they were very severe. PTSD symptoms of flashbacks like night terrors, nightmares, persistent images and thoughts. History of PTSD today. PTSD. History of PTSD today. PTSD symptoms are appearing in about 20% of the nearly 2.7 American veterans returning from home from Afghanistan and Iraq War. Some saw action and some didn't. This is according to the joint study by non-profit RAND Corporation and the Department of Defense. Half of veterans interviewed experienced trauma in witnessing a friend seriously wounded or killed. 45% of veterans reported seeing dead or gravely wounded civilians. History continued. The number of PTSD symptoms climbed to 50% with the soldiers who have multiple tours of duty, and 50% of those diagnosed do not seek treatment. PTSD is the third most prevalent psychiatric diagnosis among the veterans using the VA. According to the 2015 New York Times article, some branches of the military do not keep fine-grained data or any data at all on suicide rates. This means that they don't keep the mental health records as a whole for the veterans. There are battalion epidemics of suicide in the military, with much higher rates of suicide and mental problems. Key diagnostics criteria for PTSD includes the history of exposure to traumatic event that meets specific stipulations and symptoms from each of the four symptom clusters: intrusion, avoidance, negative, alterations in cognition, mood, alterations in arousal and reactivity. The sixth criterion concerns durations of symptoms. The seventh assesses functioning. And the third criteria clarifies symptoms as not attributable to substance or co-occurring medical conditions. Breaking down even further with key diagnostics, looking at the DSM-5. Criterion A, stressor. The person was exposed to death, threatened death, actual or threatened serious injury, or actual threatened sexual violence as follows. 1 is required. Direct exposure, witnessing in person, indirectly by learning that a close relative or close friend was exposed to trauma. If the event involved actual or threatened death, it must have been violent or accidental. Repeated or extreme indirect exposure to adverse details of events, usually in the course of professional duties, like first responders or combat medics collecting body parts, giving aid to soldiers. This does not include indirect, non-professional exposure through electronic media, television, movies, or pictures. Criterion B, intrusion symptoms. The traumatic event is presently experienced in the following ways. 1 is required here. Recurrent involuntary intrusive memories, traumatic nightmares, dissociative reactions like flashbacks, which may occur on a continuum from brief episodes to complete loss of consciousness, intense or prolonged distress after exposure to traumatic reminders, marked physiologic reactivity after exposure to trauma-related stimuli. Criterion C, avoidance. Persistent, effortful avoidance of distressing trauma-related stimuli after the event. 1 required. Trauma-related thoughts or feelings. Trauma-related external reminders like people, places, conversations, activities, objects, or situations. Criterion D, negative alterations in cognitions and mood. Negative alterations of cognition and mood that begin or worsen after the traumatic event. 2 required. Inability to recall key features of traumatic event, usually dissociative amnesia, not due to head injury, alcohol, or drugs. Persistent and often distorted negative beliefs and expectations about oneself or the world, i.e., I am bad, the world is completely dangerous. Persistent distorted blame or self of others for causing the traumatic event or for resulting consequences. Criterion D continued. Persistent negative trauma-related emotions, fear, horror, anger, guilt, or shame, markedly diminished interest in pre-traumatic significant activities, feeling alienated from others, detachment, estrangement, constricted affect, persistent inability to experience positive emotions. Criterion E, alterations in arousal and reactivity. Trauma-related alterations in arousal and reactivity that began or worsened after the traumatic event. 2 required. Irritability or aggressive behavior, self-destructive or reckless behavior, hypervigilance, exaggerated startled response, problems in concentration, sleep disturbance. Criterion F, duration, persistent or symptoms of in criterion B, C, D, and E for more than 1 month. Criterion G, functional significance, significant symptom-related distress or functional impairment like social, occupational, relationships. Criterion H, exclusions, disturbance is not due to medication, substance use, or other illness. Specifications with dissociative symptoms, in addition to meeting criteria for diagnosis, individual experiences high levels of either the following in reaction to traumatic related stimuli: depersonalization, experience of being an outside observer or of or detached from oneself, feeling as if this is not happening to me or one were in a dream. Derealization, experience of unreality, distance, or distortion. Things are not real. Delayed expressions. Full diagnosis is not met until at least 6 months after the trauma, although onset of symptoms may occur immediately. And that's it. This is my reference. Thank you for watching.